Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something truly delightful. Why you'd regret being a Renaissance executioner. That's right, we're exploring the charming career path of professional head, chopping for municipal authorities who thought justice came with a side of public entertainment and blood-soaked platforms. So before we get into the fun stuff, take a moment to like the video if you enjoy these deep dives into historical misery. And let me know in the comments what historically terrible job you think sounds appealing until you actually think about it. Now, settle in with whatever helps you relax, because we're about to explore why swinging an axe for a living would destroy your soul, your social life, and probably your sleep schedule. So, you think being the town executioner sounds like steady work with job security? Oh, you sweet summer child. That's like thinking being a plague doctor just means wearing a cool bird mask and having excellent job security during pandemics. So you think you want to be a Renaissance executioner? Oh, you sweet summer child with your romantic notions of swift justice and dramatic final speeches. Let me paint you a picture of why this career choice would make you question every life decision that led you to this blood-soaked crossroads of human misery. First, let's talk about the job interview. Because yes, even death dealers had to audition for their roles. Picture this: you're standing in some dank municipal building, probably next to a room where they store rotting vegetables and broken dreams. The hiring committee isn't impressed by your resume listing, good with knives, and doesn't faint at the sight of blood. They want to see your technique, right there, right then. On a practice dummy that's seen more action than a tavern wench during Harvest Festival. You think you're ready. You think you understand what it means to take a life for the crown. The magistrate sits there, picking his teeth with what might be yesterday's lunch or a small bone, watching you demonstrate your swing. Too hesitant, rejected. The condemned deserves a clean death, not some amateur fumbling around like a drunk trying to thread a needle. Too enthusiastic. Also rejected, because nobody wants the town executioner getting aroused by his work. That's just bad for municipal morale. The sweet spot is professional competence with a hint of reluctant duty. You need to look like someone who understands the gravity of taking life, but won't lose sleep over it. Essentially, you need the emotional range of wet parchment with the manual dexterity of a master craftsman. Still think you've got what it takes. Congratulations, you got the job. Now comes the fun part: your first day. They hand you the tools of your trade like some twisted coming-of-age ceremony. The axe, lovingly maintained by your predecessor who either retired, died, or went completely mad, and is now wandering the countryside talking to sheep about the nature of human suffering. The sword, for those fancy noble executions where presentation matters. The rope, because sometimes the budget doesn't stretch to metal implements of death. And your personal favorite, the various torture devices for extracting confessions, because apparently just killing people isn't enough work for one person. Your workspace is a charming little platform in the town square, elevated so everyone can get a good view of the entertainment. Think of it as dinner theatre, except the dinner is usually whatever slop the condemned managed to choke down as their last meal. And the theatre is watching someone's head, separate from their shoulders in hopefully one clean stroke. The platform is stained with the artistic contributions of previous performances, a rustic patina that no amount of scrubbing will ever fully remove. You'll grow to love that smell, that iron-rich, slightly sweet aroma that follows you home and clings to your clothes like a faithful dog. But here's where it gets really interesting: the crowd.
Oh, the crowd.
These aren't your modern, civilized spectators quietly observing from a distance. These are Renaissance folk who view public executions as the premium entertainment of their age. They bring picnics. Children get lifted onto shoulders for a better view. Vendors walk through selling meat pies and all, because nothing works up an appetite quite like watching someone's final moments. The atmosphere is somewhere between a religious ceremony and a county fair, with significantly more blood and considerably less corn on the cob. You'll have your regulars, the execution enthusiasts who never miss a show. There's Margaret the baker, who always brings her knitting and provides running commentary on your technique. Bit to the left last time, dear. She'll call out helpfully, as if you're hanging a picture instead of ending a human life. Then there's old Thomas, who claims to have witnessed every execution in the past 30 years and rates them like some morbid wine connoisseur. This one's got good body, nice follow-through, but lacks the dramatic flair of the Miller's execution last spring. And the betting. Sweet merciful saints, the betting. They'll wager on everything. How many strokes it'll take, whether the condemned will cry, if they'll wet themselves, the exact angle the head will roll. You become inadvertently complicit in a gambling enterprise based on human suffering, which really wasn't covered in your job orientation. There was no job orientation. Now, about those you'll be executing. The Renaissance had a delightfully broad definition of capital crimes. Theft of goods worth more than a shilling, death, adultery, death, but make it artistic, heresy, oh you better believe that's death, probably with fire involved, witchcraft, death, but first we'll see if you float. The Renaissance approach to criminal justice was essentially, when in doubt, kill them out. With all the legal sophistication of a toddler having a tantrum. Your clients, and yes, you'll start thinking of them as clients, because detachment is the only way to maintain sanity, come from all walks of life. Petty thieves who stole bread to feed their families, and now get to feed the ravens instead. Political prisoners whose only crime was backing the wrong nobleman in some tedious power struggle. Religious dissidents who had the audacity to suggest that maybe, just maybe, the church could use some reforms. And then there are the genuinely dangerous ones, the murderers and rapists who probably deserve what's coming, which should make you feel better about your job, but somehow makes it worse, because even justified killing weighs on the soul. You'll meet them all in the dungeon beforehand, part of your duties as executioner. Some beg, some pray, some spit at you and curse your family line back to Adam. Others crack jokes, their minds already broken by the certainty of approaching death. A surprising number want to chat, as if your old friends catching up over all instead of professional killer and soon to be corpse. They'll tell you about their children, their regrets, their dreams that will now remain forever unfulfilled. You'll learn to stop listening to these confessions, because carrying the weight of dozens of abbreviated life stories is like trying to walk with stones in your shoes, except the stones are made of guilt and regret, and they never wear smooth. The nobility, oh the nobility, they get special treatment because apparently even in death, class matters. No crude wooden platform for Lord So, and so who embezzled from the royal treasury. No, he gets a proper scaffold, maybe even carpeting. Certainly a cushion to kneel on, because we wouldn't want his final moments to be uncomfortable. The sword instead of the axe, because swords are more dignified, more befitting a man of his station. Never mind that dead is dead and dignity is a luxury the deceased can't appreciate. These noble executions are formal affairs with protocols and procedures that would make a royal wedding coordinator weep with envy. You must address them properly, even as you're about to separate their head from their shoulders. My lord, you'll say, as if you're serving tea instead of death. They get to make final speeches, usually tedious affairs about their innocence or loyalty to the crown, or some such nonsense that the crowd tolerates because they paid good money for entertainment and a speech is part of the show. The commoners get a quicker send-off, but don't think that makes your job easier. A quick death still requires skill, and the crowd expects competence regardless of the condemned's social status. Actually, they're probably more critical of commoner executions because they happen more frequently, and familiarity breeds expertise in your audience. Miss your mark on a peasant's neck, and you'll hear about it from the crowd for weeks. Then there's the technical aspect of your craft, because make no mistake, execution is a craft requiring genuine skill. That axe isn't swinging itself, and human necks are surprisingly resilient when you're trying to separate vertebrae cleanly. Too high and you hit the skull, which won't kill them cleanly and will probably chip your blade. Too low and you hit the shoulder, creating a messy, agonizing situation that requires multiple strokes and really upsets the crowd who came for swift justice, not amateur surgery. The physics matter too. Angle of approach, force of swing, followed through. You're essentially playing a very high stakes game of human anatomy, except there are no do-overs and everyone's watching. Your form needs to be perfect every single time, because a botched execution reflects poorly on the entire judicial system. And guess who gets blamed when justice looks incompetent? Not the judge who sentenced them or the jury who convicted them, but you, the person holding the axe. Weather affects your performance in ways you never considered. Rain makes the platform slippery, and footing matters when you're swinging a heavy blade with precision. Wind can affect your balance. Extreme cold makes your hands stiff, reducing dexterity. Hot summer days cause you to sweat, and sweat can make handles slippery at exactly the wrong moment. You'll develop an intimate relationship with meteorology that has nothing to do with planning picnics and everything to do with ensuring clean kills. Your equipment requires constant maintenance because a dull blade is an executioner's nightmare. You'll spend hours sharpening, oiling, checking for nicks and imperfections. The local blacksmith becomes your best friend and worst enemy, skilled enough to repair your tools but privy to their purpose in ways that make small talk awkward. How's the family? Fine, thanks. Say, can you sharpen this? Last fellow's spine was tougher than expected. There's really no graceful way to navigate these conversations. Storage of your equipment presents its own challenges. You can't exactly hang your execution axe next to the kitchen knives or store the rope with the rest of your household goods. These tools carry too much weight, literal and metaphorical, to be casually integrated into domestic life. You'll end up with a special chest or shed, creating a physical separation between your work life and home life that constantly reminds you of what you do for a living. The social aspects of being the town executioner are absolutely delightful. Nothing breaks the ice at social gatherings quite like, I kill people for the municipality. Your dating prospects narrow considerably when your profession involves legally sanctioned murder. Conversation dies when you enter rooms. Children are told to stay away from you, not because you're dangerous to them, but because parents fear your profession might be somehow contagious. Religious leaders treat you with a fascinating mixture of necessity and revulsion. They need you to carry out the temporal justice that supports their spiritual authority, but they're also deeply uncomfortable with the reality of what that entails. You'll get lectures about the sanctity of life from the same priests who blessed the proceedings that put you in business. The cognitive dissonance is palpable, and you get to live in the middle of it. Making friends becomes complicated when your job description includes kills people on schedule. Your social circle shrinks to other municipal employees and individuals whose own professions skirt the edges of societal acceptability. Gravediggers understand you. Plague doctors get the isolation. Rat catchers appreciate being associated with death and unpleasantness. But normal merchants, craftsmen, farmers, they smile politely and find reasons to be somewhere else. Marriage prospects are particularly grim. Fathers don't dream of their daughters marrying the executioner, regardless of your personal qualities or financial stability. Mothers cross themselves when you walk by. Even the local prostitutes, who aren't exactly known for their discriminating standards, think twice about your company. You become romantically radioactive, which is impressive considering the general lack of hygiene and moral flexibility of Renaissance society. The few romantic relationships you might manage come with unique complications. How do you explain coming home covered in blood? How do you discuss your day without traumatizing your partner? How was work, dear? Well, I separated 3 heads from their respective bodies, extracted a confession through creative application of heated metal, and the crowd was particularly appreciative of my follow through on the horse thief. Pass the bread. These conversations never go well. Children of executioners face their own special challenges. They inherit your social stigma without choosing your profession. Other children are forbidden to play with them. Parents whisper when they pass. They grow up understanding that daddy's work makes people uncomfortable in ways that other dangerous professions don't. Soldiers kill people too, but soldiers are heroes defending the realm. You're just the municipal cleanup crew for the legal system. Your children also inherit practical problems. What happens to your specialized tools when you retire or die? Execution equipment isn't exactly heirloom material you pass down through generations with pride. Here, son, take grandfather's headsman axe. May it serve you as faithfully as it served him in removing 43 heads with professional competence. The family legacy becomes literally bloody, and not in the metaphorical sense of family feuds or business competition. The financial aspects of execution work are more complex than you might expect. Yes, you receive payment for each execution, but you're also responsible for your own equipment, platform maintenance, and professional development. Nobody teaches executioner school. You learn on the job, and mistakes are publicly visible and professionally devastating. Your first botched execution could be your last day of employment, and you won't get good references for other positions. Income is irregular because it depends on the local crime rate and the judicial system's efficiency. Busy periods with lots of criminals mean good money, but they also mean overwork and increased chances for mistakes. Slow periods mean financial hardship, but also time to properly maintain your equipment and recover from the psychological toll of professional killing. You can't exactly diversify your skill set either. Executioner and part-time baker doesn't have the right ring, and customers might be hesitant about bread made by hands that regularly separate heads from bodies. Professional development opportunities are limited. There's no executioners guild offering workshops on technique improvement or new methods. You learn from trial and error, literally, with each error being someone's botched death and your professional humiliation. Senior executioners don't mentor junior ones, because there usually isn't enough work in one area to support multiple death dealers. You're largely on your own, figuring out the intricacies of efficient killing through practice on people who can't survive your learning curve. The psychological toll starts immediately and compounds over time. Your first execution might seem manageable, especially if the condemned was genuinely guilty of serious crimes. Justice served, society protected, order maintained. But execution is repetitive work, and repetition normalizes even the most extreme activities. By your 10th execution, you're thinking about technique instead of mortality. By your 50th, you're annoyed when the condemned takes too long to die because you have other appointments. This psychological numbing is necessary for functional performance, but devastating for personal humanity. You become efficient at ending lives, which requires suppressing natural empathy and moral hesitation. The problem is that psychological suppression isn't precise. Shut down your emotional response to killing, and you may find yourself shutting down emotional responses to everything else. Joy becomes muted. Love feels distant. Laughter seems foreign. You trade emotional range for professional competence, and the exchange rate is terrible. Sleep becomes problematic almost immediately. Not because of guilt, necessarily, but because of intrusive imagery. The human brain wasn't designed to witness repeated violent death, even when it's legal and socially sanctioned. You'll dream about the executions, reliving them with unwanted detail and unwelcome variations. Sometimes you'll dream about botching executions you performed successfully. Sometimes you'll dream about executing people you know. Sometimes you'll dream about being executed yourself, experiencing the fear and helplessness you've witnessed so many times. The dreams evolve over time, becoming more elaborate and disturbing. Your sleeping mind processes the accumulated trauma of professional killing in ways that make rest impossible. You'll try various remedies, alcohol, which helps initially, but creates dependency problems. Prayer, which feels hypercritical given your profession. Physical exhaustion, which just makes the dreams more vivid. And eventually resignation to disrupted sleep as an occupational hazard like calloused hands or back pain. Daytime hallucinations occasionally develop, usually involving peripheral vision glimpses of headless figures or hearing voices of the executed. These aren't necessarily signs of madness, but rather symptoms of a mind trying to process experiences it wasn't equipped to handle. The Renaissance understanding of mental health was limited, so you'll get no professional help, just suspicious looks and whispered speculation about whether the executioner has finally gone mad. Your relationship with death becomes peculiar and uncomfortable. Most people fear death or view it as a distant inevitability. You work with death daily, making it immediate and concrete for others, while somehow feeling both more and less connected to your own mortality. You understand the mechanics of death intimately, but lose touch with its emotional and spiritual significance. Death becomes a professional procedure instead of a profound human experience. This professional relationship with mortality affects your response to natural deaths. When family members or friends die from illness or accident, you find yourself thinking about the process clinically instead of grieving appropriately. You know too much about how bodies fail and what death actually looks like to maintain the comforting illusions that help most people cope with loss. Your professional expertise becomes a barrier to normal human emotional responses. The religious implications of your profession create constant internal conflict. Renaissance Christianity taught that all life was sacred, created by God and not to be ended by human hands except in the most extreme circumstances. Yet here you are, ending lives regularly as part of your job description. The theological contradiction is unavoidable. You're simultaneously serving divine justice by punishing evildoers and violating divine law by committing murder. Different religious authorities offer different explanations for this contradiction, none of them entirely satisfying. Some argue that executioners are instruments of divine will, carrying out God's justice on earth. Others suggest that executioners bear moral responsibility for each death and must seek forgiveness. Still others claim that legal execution isn't murder because it's sanctioned by legitimate authority. You get to live in the middle of this theological debate, never knowing with certainty whether you're serving God or defying Him. Prayer becomes complicated when your profession involves killing. Do you pray for the souls of those you execute? Do you ask forgiveness for each death? Do you thank God for the strength to carry out your duties? The standard prayers don't address your situation, and creating personal prayers feels presumptuous. You might find yourself avoiding religious services because the sermons about mercy and forgiveness seem to be directed specifically at you, or because you're afraid other parishioners will be uncomfortable with your presence. The afterlife implications are terrifying to contemplate. If souls persist after death, you've created dozens of enemies who might be waiting for you in whatever comes next. If divine judgment is real, how do you justify a lifetime of legally sanctioned killing? If resurrection is possible, will all those you executed return to confront you? These theological concerns add another layer of psychological burden to an already overwhelming profession. Your expertise in killing makes you valuable in ways you never wanted to be. During times of war or civil unrest, military leaders might request your services for battlefield executions or interrogations. Your skills in extracting confessions through torture become politically useful when authorities need information from prisoners. You find yourself drawn into larger conflicts not as a soldier fighting for cause or country, but as a technician of violence whose specialized knowledge serves whoever can pay for it. This expansion of your role beyond simple municipal execution creates moral complications. Executing criminals convicted through legal process, however flawed, feels different from killing prisoners of war or torturing political dissidents for information. But the skills are transferable, and the authorities who employ you for regular executions see no meaningful distinction between different applications of your expertise. You become a tool of state violence in ways that extend far beyond your original job description. The political neutrality required for your position becomes increasingly difficult to maintain as conflicts develop. You're expected to execute supporters of whatever faction currently holds power, regardless of your personal beliefs or sympathies. Today's patriot becomes tomorrow's traitor based on political wins that have nothing to do with actual guilt or innocence. You become an enforcer of political orthodoxy, whether you want to be or not. Your growing reputation for competence and discretion makes you valuable to private citizens who need problems solved violently. Wealthy merchants might approach you about eliminating business rivals. Nobles might request assistance with removing political obstacles. These private contracts pay better than municipal work, but they transform you from a public servant carrying out legal sentences into a private assassin working for whoever can afford your services. The temptation to accept private work is significant because municipal execution doesn't pay well enough to support a comfortable lifestyle. The moral distinction between legal execution and murder for hire becomes blurred when you're performing essentially the same actions for different employers. The skills are identical, only the authorization differs. And when that authorization comes from corrupt officials or politically motivated courts, even legal executions start feeling like murder for hire. Your technical expertise develops in directions you never intended. What started as competence in quick, clean execution evolves into knowledge of prolonged death, information extraction through pain, and psychological manipulation of prisoners. These skills make you valuable to authorities who need more than simple killing. You become a specialist in applied human suffering, which sounds dramatic but accurately describes your expanded professional capabilities. The tools of your trade multiply and specialize as your role expands. Simple axes and swords give way to sophisticated torture devices designed to cause maximum pain, while preserving life long enough to extract information. You learn the anatomy of agony, which wounds are immediately fatal, which cause excruciating pain but heal cleanly, which create lasting damage without killing. This knowledge makes you an expert in human vulnerability, which is useful professionally but devastating personally. Maintaining and improving torture devices requires the same attention to detail as execution equipment, but with different objectives. Instead of ensuring quick death, you're ensuring prolonged survival under extreme duress. The craftsmanship involved is perversely impressive devices that can break bones without causing fatal damage. Mechanisms that can apply precise amounts of pressure to specific body parts, instruments designed to maximize psychological impact through fear and anticipation. Your workspace expands from the simple execution platform to include private chambers for interrogation and torture. These spaces require soundproofing to prevent screams from disturbing the neighbors. They need proper drainage for blood and other bodily fluids. They require restraining equipment to secure prisoners during procedures. You find yourself becoming an interior decorator, specializing in spaces designed for human suffering, which is not a career path anyone dreams about in childhood. The administrative aspects of expanded execution work are surprisingly complex. You need to keep records of procedures performed, information extracted, and deaths caused. These records serve as proof of work performed for payment purposes, but they also create evidence of activities that might be politically embarrassing or legally problematic if political winds shift. You become simultaneously chronicler and participant in systematic state violence. Working with multiple employers creates scheduling conflicts that would be amusing if they weren't so morbid. The municipal authorities want criminals executed on specific dates for maximum public impact. Military leaders need prisoners interrogated according to strategic timelines. Private clients want their problems eliminated discreetly and quickly. You find yourself managing a calendar of death and torture that requires the organizational skills of a wedding planner with significantly grimmer subject matter. The professional relationships you develop are uniquely twisted. Judges who sentence people to death become your best customers. Prison wardens who house your future clients develop working relationships with you based on mutual professional needs. Military officers who bring you prisoners treat you as a valued specialist rather than a necessary evil. These relationships are cordial and professional, but they're built on a foundation of shared involvement in systematic killing that makes normal friendship impossible. Your reputation spreads beyond your immediate area as word of your competence travels through official channels. Other municipalities might request your services for particularly important executions. Neighboring regions might borrow your expertise for complex cases requiring specialized knowledge. You become a traveling consultant in death, which sounds impressive until you consider that your expertise is literally killing people efficiently. The travel aspects of expanded execution work present their own challenges. Transporting torture equipment discreetly requires planning and resources. Working in unfamiliar locations means adapting to different facilities and local customs. Each new place brings new clients, new political situations, and new moral compromises. You become a touring specialist in applied violence, moving from place to place, leaving trails of bodies and broken spirits. Hotel accommodations become problematic when your luggage contains implements of torture and execution. Innkeepers ask questions about unusual tools and suspicious stains. Other travelers avoid conversation when they learn about your profession. You find yourself staying in increasingly disreputable establishments where questions aren't asked and unusual guests are routine. Your lodging choices reflect your profession's social acceptability, which is to say they don't. Eating in public becomes uncomfortable when your hands are stained with blood from recent work. Other diners lose their appetite when they recognize you or guess your profession from context clues. Restaurant owners worry that your presence will drive away customers. You learn to eat quickly, alone, and in places where your appearance won't disturb other patrons. Meals become functional rather than social, another casualty of professional isolation. The legal protections afforded to executioners vary significantly between jurisdictions, creating professional uncertainty. Some areas grant immunity for actions performed in official capacity, while others hold executioners personally responsible for any excess or error. The legal distinction between authorized violence and murder can be thin and politically motivated, leaving you vulnerable to prosecution if political situations change or if you make powerful enemies. Understanding local laws becomes crucial for professional survival, but legal codes are complex and subject to interpretation by authorities who may have personal or political reasons for prosecuting you. You need to stay informed about changing regulations, shifting political alliances, and legal precedents that might affect your professional activities. This requires intelligence gathering and political awareness that goes far beyond simple execution competence. Contracts with employers become increasingly important as your work expands and diversifies. Written agreements provide some legal protection and ensure payment for services rendered, but contracts for torture and execution services can't be too explicit without creating incriminating evidence. You develop skills in euphemistic language and carefully ambiguous phrasing that describe your services without explicitly documenting illegal activities. Payment collection becomes more complex as your client base expands and diversifies. Municipal authorities pay through official channels with regular delays and bureaucratic complications. Military clients pay from campaign funds that might be interrupted by changing political situations. Private clients pay in cash or goods that can't be easily traced. You become expert in various forms of compensation and develop multiple methods for securing payment for services rendered. Banking relationships become impossible to maintain once financial institutions understand your profession. Banks prefer customers whose income sources are respectable and whose activities don't create legal or social complications. Your deposits of blood, stained coins and payments from questionable sources make bank officials nervous. You learn to work with money changers and informal financial networks that don't ask questions about income sources. Insurance is completely unavailable for executioners and torture specialists. No company will insure your equipment against damage or theft. No provider will cover injuries sustained during professional activities. No policy will protect against legal challenges or professional liability. You operate without the financial safety net that other professionals take for granted, making every aspect of your work financially risky. Professional liability is enormous and uninsurable. Botched executions can result in lawsuits from victims' families or political consequences from embarrassed authorities. Excessive torture can lead to criminal charges if political winds shift. Deaths during interrogation might be classified as murder if you lose official protection. Every professional decision carries potential for catastrophic personal consequences that can't be transferred to insurance companies or employers. The medical knowledge you develop through professional necessity is both impressive and horrifying. You learn human anatomy through practical application, understanding bone structure from breaking it, comprehending circulation from interrupting it, grasping nerve pathways from exploiting them. This knowledge makes you medically knowledgeable in ways that would be valuable if applied to healing rather than harming. Your understanding of human psychology deepens through exposure to people under extreme stress. You learn to read fear, desperation, and hopelessness with professional accuracy. You understand how different personality types respond to various forms of pressure and pain. This psychological expertise would be valuable in legitimate fields, but it's gained through causing rather than alleviating human suffering. The philosophical implications of your profession become unavoidable as you accumulate experience and bodies. Questions about the nature of justice, the value of human life, and the role of violence in society aren't abstract theological debates when you're implementing society's answers through practical application. You become a philosopher of applied violence, whether you want to be or not, contemplating the deepest questions of human existence through the lens of professionally administered death. Your perspective on crime and punishment evolves as you see the justice system's actual operation rather than its theoretical ideals. You witness how wealth influences legal outcomes, how political considerations affect sentencing, and how personal vendettas masquerade as legal justice. The noble ideals of law and order become tarnished by daily exposure to their corrupt implementation, leaving you cynical about the system you serve. Retirement planning becomes crucial but complicated for executioners. You can't work indefinitely because the physical and psychological toll eventually makes competent performance impossible. But transitioning to other professions is difficult when your RA Sum consists entirely of killing and torturing people. Your professional skills aren't transferable to legitimate employment, and your reputation makes employers hesitant to hire you for normal work. Financial planning for retirement requires accumulating enough resources to support yourself without continuing professional activities. But execution work doesn't pay well enough to build substantial savings, and the irregular nature of the work makes financial planning difficult. You need to balance current income needs with future security requirements while working in a profession that offers no conventional advancement opportunities or pension benefits. Geographic relocation might be necessary for successful retirement, moving to areas where your reputation hasn't preceded you. But establishing new identities and social connections is difficult when your entire adult life has been spent in professional isolation. You lack the social skills and network connections that most people develop through normal career progression and community involvement. Alternative career options are limited for retired executioners. Your professional experience doesn't translate well to other fields, and your reputation follows you regardless of your desire to change professions. Some possibilities include working with other social outcasts, providing security for disreputable enterprises, or moving to frontier areas where past reputations matter less than current usefulness. The legacy you leave behind is entirely negative from any conventional perspective. You're remembered for taking lives rather than improving them, for causing suffering rather than alleviating it, for serving power rather than justice. Your professional achievements are measured in bodies rather than buildings, in screams rather than smiles, in fear rather than respect. History will record you as an instrument of institutional violence rather than a contributor to human progress. Your professional equipment becomes a problem after retirement or death. These specialized tools of torture and execution can't be donated to charity or sold at estate sales. They're too historically significant to discard, but too morally problematic to preserve as heirlooms. They become physical reminders of your profession that outlast your own life, continuing to disturb and fascinate people long after you're gone. The social rehabilitation of executioners' families requires multiple generations and geographic relocation. Your children carry the stigma of your profession, even if they choose completely different life paths. Your grandchildren might escape direct association with your reputation, but family histories have ways of surfacing at inconvenient moments. The social consequences of your professional choices extend far beyond your own lifetime. Documentation of your activities creates permanent historical records that reflect poorly on your memory and your family's reputation. Official records of executions performed, confessions extracted, and deaths caused become part of the historical record. Future historians will study your work as evidence of institutional violence and social barbarism, ensuring that your negative legacy persists indefinitely. The cumulative psychological damage from years of professional killing and torture is irreversible and progressive. Each execution adds to the burden of memories that can't be forgotten or integrated into normal human experience. Each torture session contributes to the dehumanization required for continued professional function. The psychological cost compounds over time, making retirement relief insufficient to restore normal mental health. Physical wear on your body from years of swinging heavy axes, operating torture devices, and working in stress-filled environments creates lasting health problems that persist after retirement. The repetitive motions required for competent execution cause joint damage and muscle strain. The psychological stress manifests in physical symptoms that continue even after the original stressors are removed. Your relationship with your own mortality becomes paradoxical and disturbing. Daily exposure to death should make you more aware of life's fragility and value. But professional necessity requires emotional detachment from the deaths you cause. You become simultaneously obsessed with death and disconnected from its emotional significance. This psychological contradiction creates internal tension that can't be resolved through rational thought or spiritual practice. The skills you've developed through professional necessity become burdens rather than assets after retirement. Your expertise in human anatomy, psychology, and vulnerability serves no constructive purpose in civilian life. Your knowledge of torture techniques and execution methods is interesting only to historians and other specialists in violence. Your professional competencies become dark secrets to hide rather than accomplishments to celebrate. Social interaction remains difficult long after retirement because your conversation defaults to topics and perspectives that disturb normal people. Your sense of humor, shaped by years of gallows work, makes others uncomfortable. Your casual attitude toward violence and death, developed through professional necessity, seems callous and frightening to those who haven't shared your experiences. The moral weight of accumulated deaths doesn't diminish with time or distance from active practice. If anything, retirement provides time to contemplate the full scope of your professional activities without the distracting pressure of current work. Each person you executed becomes an individual case for review and regret rather than simply another day's work completed competently. Religious reconciliation becomes increasingly important, but increasingly difficult as you age and approach your own death. The theological questions that seemed manageable during active practice become urgent personal concerns as mortality approaches. The possibility of divine judgment for professional activities that seemed legally and socially justified becomes terrifying when considered from the perspective of someone about to face whatever comes after death. Your final illness and death carry symbolic weight that affects how people interpret your life and legacy. A peaceful death might seem inappropriately comfortable for someone who caused so much suffering. A painful death might seem like divine justice, but also like human tragedy. The circumstances of your dying become part of your story in ways that don't affect people in normal professions. Burial arrangements present unique challenges because your reputation affects even posthumous social acceptance. Some communities might refuse burial in consecrated ground. Some families might want discreet services to avoid unwanted attention. Some religious authorities might require special arrangements or ceremonies to address the moral complications of your profession. The ultimate irony of choosing execution as a profession is that you spend your life implementing society's ultimate punishment, while simultaneously deserving that punishment according to many moral and religious frameworks. You become both the instrument of ultimate justice and the appropriate target for that justice. This philosophical contradiction haunts every aspect of your professional and personal life, making peace impossible and redemption questionable. So there you have it. The complete picture of why you'd regret choosing Renaissance executioner as your career path. The social isolation, psychological damage, moral corruption, physical dangers, financial insecurity, and spiritual condemnation combine to create a profession that destroys everyone who practices it. The brief sense of power and importance you might feel when first swinging the axe gets overwhelmed quickly by the accumulated costs of professional killing. You entered this imaginary career thinking about justice served and society protected. You exit it, if you're lucky enough to retire rather than die in service, knowing that you've become exactly the kind of person society needs protection from. The transformation from idealistic public servant to damaged social pariah is gradual but inevitable. The natural result of spending years implementing the ultimate punishment on behalf of a system that can never adequately justify the human cost of that implementation. The Renaissance executioner represents the intersection of social necessity and individual destruction, a profession that serves society by destroying the people who practice it. It's a job that needs doing but ruins everyone who does it, a social function that protects civilization by sacrificing the humanity of its practitioners. In choosing this career, you trade your soul for society's security, your peace for public safety, your humanity for civic order, and that, fundamentally, is why you'd regret being a Renaissance executioner, not because the work is difficult or dangerous or poorly paid, but because it transforms you into something less than human, while requiring you to maintain enough humanity to function in the society you're protecting. It's a profession that asks the impossible, demands the unbearable, and offers nothing in return except the hollow satisfaction of duty performed and justice served. Whatever those concepts might mean to someone whose life's work involves ending other people's lives on behalf of a system that considers such endings necessary for the greater good.